What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks onto a late-night set expecting a conversation and instead gets ambushed by a host who thinks he knows better? In just 48 seconds of one comment, Jon Stewart turned what should have been a simple interview into a battleground that ended with Denzel Washington doing something nobody ever thought they would see. He walked off, and he did not look back. The awkward hour was supposed to be different that night. Denzel Washington, the man who commanded respect in every room he entered, agreed to sit down and talk about his latest project. The audience was packed. The energy was electric. Everyone wanted to hear what Denzel had to say. But from the moment he walked out and shook Jon's hand, something felt off. Jon started friendly enough. He smiled at the camera, welcomed everyone, and introduced Denzel with all the praise you would expect. Two-time Academy Award winner, living legend, icon of cinema. The audience erupted in applause as Denzel settled into the guest chair, relaxed but focused. He was ready to have a good conversation. "So, Denzel, let me ask you something right off the bat," Jon said, leaning forward with that grin he always wore when he thought he was about to make a clever point. "Your new movie? It's getting a lot of buzz, but some people are saying it's just another one of those feel-good movies that doesn't really say anything important. What do you say to that?" The audience went quiet. You could feel the shift. That was not a normal opening question. That was a setup. Denzel's expression did not change much, but his eyes narrowed just slightly. He took a breath and spoke calmly. "Well, Jon, I think people who say that probably have not seen the movie yet. It is a story about family, about struggle, about finding your way when everything around you is falling apart. I do not know what is not important about that." Jon chuckled, but it was not a warm chuckle. It was the kind of laugh someone gives when they think they are smarter than you. Sure, but come on. Family drama, overcoming obstacles, the hero's journey. We have seen this 1,000 times. Do not you think as an artist, as someone with your platform, you should be doing something more? I do not know. Challenging? Something that actually makes people uncomfortable? Denzel paused. The audience could sense the tension building. He leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in his lap, and when he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "Jon, with all due respect, who gets to decide what is challenging? You, some critic who watches movies for a living but has never made one? I have been doing this for over 40 years. I have played kings and criminals, heroes and villains, and everything in between. I do not need anyone to tell me what kind of stories are worth telling." The audience broke into applause. They were on Denzel's side, but Jon was not backing down. In fact, he seemed energized by the pushback. Okay, I hear you," Jon said, holding up his hands like he was trying to calm things down, but his tone said otherwise. "But let me push back on that a little. Is not it a bit convenient that you keep making these movies that appeal to the widest possible audience? Movies that do not ruffle any feathers? I mean, when was the last time you did something that really took a risk?" Denzel's jaw tightened. This was not an interview anymore. This was an interrogation. And Jon was enjoying it way too much. "Every role is a risk," Denzel said, his voice lower now, more deliberate. "Every time you step on a set, every time you try to bring a character to life, you are putting yourself out there. But I think what you are really asking is, why am I not making the kind of movies you think I should make? And that is not a question I am interested in answering." Jon laughed again, that same dismissive laugh, and waved his hand like he was brushing off what Denzel just said. "Come on, do not be so sensitive. I'm just trying to have a real conversation here. Is not that what we do on this show? We talk about the tough stuff. We do not just pat each other on the back and promote whatever project someone is selling." The word selling hung in the air like a slap. Denzel did not move for a moment. He just stared at Jon, and you could see something shift behind his eyes. The patience was running out. "So that is what you think I'm doing here?" Denzel asked quietly. "Selling something?" Jon shrugged, still grinning like this was all a game. "I mean, that is what these interviews are, right? You come on, you talk about your movie, you tell a couple of funny stories, and then people go buy tickets. It is marketing. Let us just be honest about it." The audience was not clapping anymore. Some people were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This was getting ugly, and everyone could feel it. Denzel sat forward, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "You know what, Jon? I thought I was coming here to talk to someone who had respect for the work. Someone who understood what it takes to make something, to pour your heart into it, to try to create something that moves people. But instead, I'm sitting here getting lectured by someone who thinks he is the smartest person in the room. John's smile faltered for just a second, but he tried to recover. Hey, I'm just asking questions. That is my job. No, Denzel said, his voice rising now. Your job is to have a conversation, but you are not interested in that. You are interested in making yourself look clever at my expense, and I'm not going to sit here and let you do that. The tension was unbearable. The cameras kept rolling, but you could tell the crew did not know what to do. Jon tried to laugh it off again, but this time nobody was buying it. Denzel, come on. You are taking this way too seriously. Can we just... What? Denzel interrupted. Can we just pretend like you did not just insult my work? Like you did not just call me a sellout on national television? No, Jon, we cannot just do that. Jon's face was turning red now. He was not used to being challenged like this, especially not on his own show. He tried to regain control, his voice getting louder. I did not call you a sellout. I'm saying that maybe, just maybe, you are playing it safe. And for someone with your talent, that is a waste. Denzel stood up. The audience gasped. This was not in the script. This was not how interviews ended on the awkward hour. You want to know what is a waste, Jon? Denzel said, looking down at the host, who suddenly seemed very small in his chair. Wasting my time sitting here listening to you tell me how I should be living my life and doing my job. You sit behind this desk every night and you judge people. You tear them down. You think you are some kind of gatekeeper of what is good and what matters. But you know what? You are just a talk show host, and I do not have to listen to this. The studio was dead silent. Jon opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. He looked to his producers off camera, but they were frozen too. I came here in good faith, Denzel continued, his voice calm now, but filled with a power that made everyone listen. I came here to talk about a project I care about, with people I work with who poured everything into making it. And you turned it into this. So I am done. He pulled off the microphone, clipped to his jacket, and set it on the chair. Jon finally found his voice, but it was shaky. Denzel, wait. Come on. Let us just take a breath and... No, Denzel said simply. You do not get to do this. You do not get to disrespect me and then ask me to calm down so you can save face. That is not how this works. He turned to the audience, and his expression softened just a little. I apologize that you all had to see this. You came here for a good time, and you deserve better than what happened here tonight. Then he looked back at Jon one last time, and you should know better. With that, Denzel Washington walked off the stage. The audience did not know whether to clap or stay silent. A few people started applauding, then more joined in, until the whole studio was giving him a standing ovation as he disappeared behind the curtain. Jon sat there, stunned, his face pale. He looked at the camera, then at his notes, then back at the empty chair where Denzel had been sitting. We will be right back. He stammered, and the show cut to commercial. But let us rewind for a moment, because to understand how it got to that breaking point, you need to understand what led up to it. The first few minutes of the interview had actually seemed normal. Jon did his usual opening monologue, made some jokes about the news, and then brought out his guest. Denzel walked onto the stage looking as composed as ever. Tailored suit, confident stride, that commanding presence that made him a movie star in the first place. They shook hands. They sat down. Jon started with what seemed like a compliment about Denzel's long career. But even then, if you were paying close attention, you could hear the edge in his voice. The compliments felt backhanded, like Jon was setting up for something. You have been making movies for decades, Jon had said. You have done action, drama, you have directed, you have done it all. So at this point in your career, what drives you? Is it just about the paycheck now, or is there still some fire there? Denzel had smiled politely, but you could see in his eyes that he caught the implication. Is it just about the paycheck now? Like Denzel Washington, one of the most dedicated actors in the business, was just phoning it in for money. The fire has never gone out. Denzel had replied, every project I choose because it means something to me, because I think it has something to say. Money is not what gets me out of bed in the morning. Jon had nodded, but that smirk never left his face. Right, of course. But you have to admit, some of your recent choices have been a little safe. Like you are not taking the big swings anymore. That was the first real jab, and Denzel handled it with grace. I think that is a matter of perspective. What looks safe to you might be incredibly challenging to someone else. I do not make movies to impress critics or hosts of talk shows. I make them because they resonate with me. The audience had clapped for that, but Jon just kept pushing. But do not you think you have a responsibility? You are Denzel Washington. When you sign on to a project, that means something. People listen to you. Should not you be using that influence to push boundaries, to challenge the status quo? And that was when Denzel's patience started to wear thin. You could see it in the way he shifted in his seat, the way his smile became more forced. Jon, I have spent my entire career pushing boundaries. I have played characters that made people uncomfortable, that challenged their assumptions, but I am not going to apologize for also making movies that bring people joy, that give them hope. The world is hard enough. If I can make something that helps someone get through their day, that is not selling out. That is being human. It was a beautiful answer, heartfelt and honest. The audience loved it, but Jon was not done. He leaned in closer, his elbows on his desk. "Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here," he had said, and that phrase alone made everyone tense up because nothing good ever follows it. Some people would say that playing it safe is actually irresponsible, that when you have the platform you have, the wealth you have, the respect you have, and you choose to make movies that do not challenge anyone, you are kind of wasting that privilege. The word privilege landed like a bomb. Denzel's eyes narrowed. "Privilege," he repeated slowly. "You think what I have is privilege?" Jon doubled down. "Well, yeah. I mean, you are one of the biggest stars in the world. You can get any movie made that you want. That is privilege." Denzel's voice went quiet, which somehow made it more powerful. "You know what privilege is, Jon? Privilege is sitting behind that desk and judging people without ever having walked in their shoes. Privilege is assuming you know what someone else's journey has been like. I have worked for everything I have, every single thing, and I do not owe you or anyone else an explanation for the choices I make." The audience erupted. They were firmly on Denzel's side now, and Jon could feel the room turning against him, but instead of backing off, he got defensive. "I am not attacking you," Jon said, his voice getting louder. "I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about the state of cinema and your role in it." "My role in it?" Denzel shot back. "Who made you the judge of what my role should be? You make jokes for a living. I create art. We are not the same." That line cut deep. You could see Jon's face flush. His crew was probably screaming in his earpiece to change the subject, to go to commercial, to do something. But Jon's ego would not let him back down. "That is not fair," Jon protested. "I respect what you do. I'm just saying that maybe you could be doing more." "More," Denzel said, his voice dripping with frustration. "I have made over 60 films. I have won every award there is to win. I have trained young actors. I have directed. I have produced. What more do you want from me?" Jon spread his hands. "I just think." "No," Denzel interrupted, his voice sharp. "You do not get to tell me what you think I should be doing with my career. You do not get to sit there in your comfortable chair with your writers feeding you jokes and judge how I spend my life." The audience was on the edge of their seats now. This was not entertainment anymore. This was real. Two men, two egos, colliding in real time. "I am not trying to judge you," Jon insisted, but his tone said otherwise. "I'm trying to push you to think bigger." "Push me?" Denzel repeated, and there was genuine disbelief in his voice. "You think you need to push me?" "Jon, I do not need you to push me. I do not need your permission or your approval. I am not here for that." Jon tried to steer things back. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Let us talk about the movie itself. What is it about?" But Denzel was not having it. "Why would I talk to you about my movie now? So you can tear that apart too? So you can tell me how I should have made it differently? No, thank you." The producers had to be panicking now. This interview was a disaster, and it was only getting worse. Jon tried a different approach, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Denzel, I respect you. I really do. I'm a huge fan of your work. I'm just trying to have a meaningful conversation here." Denzel stared at him for a long moment. "A meaningful conversation," he said slowly. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I am sitting, this feels like an ambush. It feels like you invited me here just so you could make yourself look smart by tearing me down." Jon shook his head vigorously. "That is not what this is. I promise you, that is not what this is." "Then what is it?" Denzel challenged. "Because every question you have asked has been designed to put me on the defensive. Every comment you have made has been a criticism wrapped in a question. That is not a conversation. That is a trial. The metaphor hit hard. A trial. That was exactly what it felt like. Jon was the prosecutor, and Denzel was in the defendant's chair, except he never agreed to any of this. Jon opened his mouth to respond, but Denzel held up a hand. Let me ask you something, Jon. When was the last time you created something? Really created something from nothing? Written something, built something, made something that put your soul on display for the world to judge? Jon stammered. I write jokes. I do this show every night. Denzel nodded slowly. You have a team of writers. You read off a teleprompter. You interview people who have actually done things. But you, yourself, what have you created? It was a devastating question, and Jon had no good answer for it. That is not fair, Jon said weakly. We do different things. Exactly, Denzel said. We do different things. So maybe you should stick to your lane and let me stick to mine. The audience was silent. This was brutal to watch, but nobody could look away. Jon's voice took on a sharp edge. So I'm not allowed to have an opinion? I'm not allowed to critique? That is literally what critics do. That is what journalists do. You can have all the opinions you want, Denzel replied, but that does not mean I have to sit here and listen to them, and it does not mean your opinions are correct just because you have a platform. Jon laughed bitterly. So what, anyone who disagrees with you is wrong? That is pretty arrogant, do not you think? And that was the final straw, calling Denzel Washington arrogant on his own show after spending the entire interview attacking him. Denzel's expression went cold. I will tell you what is arrogant, Jon. Arrogant is inviting someone onto your show and then spending the whole time trying to make them look bad. Arrogant is thinking you know better than someone who has been doing this for 40 years. Arrogant is talking down to your guests like they are a child who needs to be educated. Jon started to respond, but Denzel was not done. You want to know why I make the movies I make? Because I believe in them. Because they matter to me. Because I am not trying to be the coolest person in the room, or the most edgy, or the most provocative. I am trying to tell stories that connect with people. Real people, not critics, not talk show hosts, people. His voice was rising now, filled with passion and frustration. And if that makes me safe in your eyes, if that makes me boring or predictable or whatever other word you want to use, then fine, I will take that. Because at the end of the day, I can sleep at night knowing I made something that mattered to someone. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air. Jon looked like he had been slapped. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He glanced at his producers again, desperate for help, but they were just as lost as he was. Denzel stood up then, not in a rush, not in anger, but with a quiet dignity that made the moment even more powerful. This was a mistake, he said simply. I should not have come here. Jon found his voice. Denzel, please, sir, let us just reset. Let us start over. But Denzel was already removing his microphone. There is nothing to reset, Jon. You showed me exactly who you are, tonight, and I am not interested in being part of whatever this is. He set the mic down with a soft click that somehow echoed through the silent studio. Jon stood up too, panic evident on his face now. You are really going to walk out in the middle of the show? Denzel looked at him with something that might have been pity. I am not walking out in the middle of your show, Jon. I am choosing not to be disrespected anymore. There is a difference. He turned to leave, but then paused and looked back one more time. You know what the saddest part of this is? You could have had a great interview tonight. You could have asked me about the work, about the craft, about the people I worked with. We could have had a real conversation. But you were too busy trying to prove something. And in doing that, you proved exactly the wrong thing. With those final words, Denzel Washington walked off the awkward hour stage for the last time. The audience, after a moment of shocked silence, rose to their feet in applause. Not polite applause, but thunderous, sustained applause that filled the studio and said everything that needed to be said about who was right and who was wrong in that exchange. Jon stood there, alone on his stage, watching one of the greatest actors of all time walk away. His show, his set, his rules, but none of it mattered because he had lost the room completely. He had lost the audience. He had lost the respect of everyone watching. When the cameras finally cut away to commercial, Jon slumped back into his chair. His producers rushed onto the stage, talking rapidly, trying to figure out how to salvage the rest of the show, but there was no salvaging it. Denzel Washington had just done something nobody in Hollywood ever did. He had walked away from a bad situation with his dignity intact, while the host who tried to diminish him was left looking small and petty. The remaining segments of the show were awkward and stilted. Jon tried to make jokes, tried to move on like nothing had happened, but the energy was gone. The audience was not laughing. They were not engaged. They were thinking about what they had just witnessed, a masterclass in standing up for yourself, a lesson in knowing your worth, a reminder that respect is not given freely just because someone has a camera and a desk. And the thing is, Denzel did not storm off in anger. He did not throw a tantrum or make a scene in the traditional sense. He simply recognized that he was in a situation where he was not being treated with the respect he deserved, and he removed himself from it. That takes more strength than people realize. It is easy to yell and slam doors. It is much harder to calmly, clearly state your boundaries and then enforce them. What made the whole thing even more striking was the contrast between the two men. Denzel, throughout the entire ordeal, maintained his composure. Even when he was clearly angry, even when he was frustrated and hurt by the way he was being treated, he never lost control. He never resorted to personal attacks or low blows. He spoke his truth with clarity and power, but he never crossed the line into cruelty. Jon, on the other hand, kept trying to hide behind the excuse that he was just asking questions, just trying to have a conversation. But everyone watching could see through it. Those were not genuine questions. They were attacks dressed up as curiosity. They were judgments pretending to be journalism. And when Denzel called him out on it, when Denzel refused to play along with that charade, Jon had no response. Because deep down, he knew Denzel was right. The audience knew it too. You could see it in their reactions throughout the interview. At first, they were excited to see Denzel. Then they were confused by Jon's hostile questions. Then they were uncomfortable as the tension built. And finally, they were firmly on Denzel's side, applauding his decision to leave rather than continue to subject himself to that treatment. It was a moment that transcended the usual talk show drama. This was not about a celebrity having a bad day or a host making an awkward joke. This was about respect, about dignity, about recognizing when someone is trying to use you as a stepping stone for their own ego. And it was about having the courage to walk away from that, even when the cameras are rolling, even when the world is watching. Denzel Washington did not need the awkward hour. He did not need Jon Stewart's platform or his approval. He had already proven himself 1,000 times over. And that night, he proved something else. He proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in your own diminishment. Jon learned that lesson the hard way. He thought he could push one of Hollywood's most respected figures around, could challenge him and make him look small on national television. Instead, he revealed his own insecurities, his own need to tear others down to feel important. And when Denzel refused to play that game, when he calmly dismantled every weak argument Jon threw at him and then walked away with his head held high, it exposed Jon for exactly what he was. Not a brilliant interviewer, not an insightful journalist, just a talk show host who mistook having a platform for having wisdom. The walk-off became legendary not because it was explosive or dramatic in a theatrical sense, but because it was real. It was authentic. It was a genuine human moment where someone decided enough was enough. No script could have written it better. No actor could have performed it more perfectly, because it was not a performance. It was Denzel Washington being exactly who he has always been, a man who knows his worth, who respects his craft, and who will not allow anyone, no matter how big their show is, to treat him as anything less than what he is, a legend.